And that tax feature has very rightfully ushered us into our next conversation, which is on the same thing. And today we are talking about mastering tax strategies. And to help us dissect that particular topic, I have with me Dr. Regina Wanja Kengori. Dr. Regina is an entrepreneur and the lead mentor at the Skill Up Mentorship Program. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
We're glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Now, just for basic understanding, let's begin with you telling us what tax is.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And that's a good question, and I'm so happy to be here this morning. So taxes are a way of collection, is the collection of money for government expenditure. So for government to be able to give services, to be able to do development, they need money. And that money is collected from us citizens in our businesses, in our salaries. So it is collection of that money for government to be able to run its services. Yes.
So that's what tax is.
That is tax.
All right.
Yes, that is tax. We have different obligations depending on the nature of your business, depending on who you are. So there are so many taxes and levies that are there.
Okay, and speaking about that, how about you just mention some of the taxes, the types of taxes in Kenya?
Okay.
Yeah.
So for businesses, we have the corporation tax. If you register in a business at the moment, it must come with the corporation tax. We have turnover tax. We have for smaller businesses who are doing business. We have value added tax. That is tax for consumer products. When you buy flour, sugar in the supermarket, you pay a bit of a value added tax. We have pay as you earn for us or people who are employed. Right now we have those deductions. And when you talk about deductions for employees, we also have other deductions, the SHA or the SHIF, NSSF, housing levy, and we have the NITA. So it is a combination of all those levies, especially when it comes to salaries. We have withholding taxes. If I come somewhere and I do professional services, we have the withholding tax that you do 5%. We have rental income tax for landlords, especially for residential properties. And we have stamp duties. We have excise tax. There are excisable goods out there. So if you buy water, for instance, or you buy liquor, beer, wines and spirit, they are excisable goods. So there is a stamping that is done on that, is a different tax altogether. And depending on the business that you're doing, you might find that some business is, for instance, you're a manufacturer of water, you might find that you have almost everything. But if you possibly you're doing export, you're not having some other like export, that like excise duty. So it depends on what you're actually doing. There are much more. There are levies. When we come to the county levels, there are levies, licenses, parking fee. There's other levies. When it comes to the nature of business you're doing, there's NEMA. If you need those licenses, there is other licenses depending on your business. Yes.
All right, and we have to agree that the topic of tax has been a hot debate.
True.
Of late. You know, everyone is talking about how they are really, you know, there are very high taxations around. I don't know what has changed. Like tax has been, you know, KRA has been, you know, collecting tax every fiscal year, every financial year. They do that. It's their mandate. It's what they're there to do. And everyone has a responsibility to pay tax. That is a given. But why is it that in the recent years, people have really been complaining about it?
Okay.
What do you think is the problem? I don't know if I want to call it a problem, but where is that gap? Why is it that people are really complaining about taxation right now?
So taxation has been there even before independence. It was. I think right now is the advocacy and we talk about it a lot more than we used to do at that particular point. The other portion is that now people are knowledgeable. They are also seeking services. Because at the end of the day, when we say we are collecting taxes, on the other side, we should see expenditure, free education, free health. So people are more at a position of demanding that we are paying now. Let's see on the other side. Also, we have issues of budgeting that has been so high, and our collection has been not very efficient with the budget. If you remember the budget for 2024-2025, we were coming to about 3.9 trillion against what was collected or what was proposed to be collected, about 2.5 trillion. Yeah. So meaning that the budget is way, way high. And because of that, there's a lot of push with more collection. So KRA is out there. They are more vocal about collection. They are doing more in audits. They are out there. They're even doing road shows. So the topic now becomes at everybody's mouth. If you ask children, they'll tell you something about taxes. If you ask the older parent, they'll still tell you something about taxes, unlike before. Yes.
And what's the best way maybe for to go about tax collection? Looking at it in the I want to look at it at the eyes of a common mwananchi, someone who's watching us right now and they are unemployed. They haven't had a job probably in the last 3 years or 2 years, or even just this year. What's the best way to go about collecting tax? Having that person in mind who's feeling like, I don't even have a job, you know, but when I go to get my products at the supermarket, the VAT is really high.
Expensive. At the moment, the purchasing power of Kenyans is quite low. We must admit that. So people having incomes, disposable income to actually spend is a problem. And this is because of from COVID issues and all the issues that we have had, but most probable because the government is not able to meet its development goals. So for instance, when we collect taxes and that taxes are used for recurrent budget, paying salaries, paying just for maintenance, there is no money for development. So there's a lot of money in circulation for people to actually use that money and have the purchasing power. So the purchasing power is quite low. So this person who is not employed, we find that there are things in the supermarket or in the shops that are very, very expensive. Also, we also see the cost of production is very high. When we talk about items being high, it's not just VAT. We also look at the cost of production. So the cost of production long time ago is not today. Right now, the fuel costs with the Finance Act 2023, the fuel VAT was from 8% to 16%, and fuel covers everything. So all the production costs went up. If we talk about imports, there are so many levies at the import level if you're importing raw materials. So at the end of the day, if you're doing sugar, the costs for production is so high. By the time now you put 16%, becomes much, much higher. So even as we look at taxes, because what KRA says and what the government also says that we are operating at 16%, well, some of the countries in East Africa are at 18%. But what about our cost of production? So that at the time now we releasing, we have seen issues that people are not producing in Kenya. They prefer buying that final product in China. If you look, and the same way, if you look at the egg production possibly in Uganda or Tanzania, by the time it gets to our port, Mombasa, where there's the biggest consumer of those eggs, is much cheaper than us here in Kenya. So our production is also a problem. At the end of the day, when we now add on taxes, it becomes even worse.
So what's the best way to mitigate that?
A lot of subsidy. So when we look at the previous government was able to give subsidies in fuel, but I don't know if they're in a position because of loans or debts. The debts that the government is paying to external, they had borrowed a lot of money, so still eating on the on the taxes that we are having. So I don't know the issue of subsidy where would come in.
Okay.
We had issues of like agriculture. When you look at our country, we say agriculture is the backbone of our country. If we go to the way we had the project of fertilizers, when people have something to eat, things becomes much easier to be able to work. What they should do is work on the economy to just make sure that there's circulation of money. Interest rates, right now the interest rates are at 25%. Even borrowing money right now is a hard nut. And also not just interest rate, because people are not repaying loans. By the time a loan is approved, there are so many processes that this entrepreneur is undergoing. So the government should look at the loans the way they had done a capping to just make sure that the entrepreneur is able to get loans to do business. They should work on inflation. They should work on making sure that the agricultural sector, the backbone of our sectors, they can be able to give subsidies so that at least things get much better.
Well, that's the best way to try and just, mitigate this, and so that everyone gets to feel at least like things are fair, because at the moment people feel like it's not really fair on them. But anyway, so when you talk about tax compliance certificates, when you have a tax compliance certificate, what does that mean? Does that mean that you are a law-abiding citizen in the sense of you pay your taxes in time, or what does that certificate imply?
The certificate is a very good concept. When you have it, it is good. It opens door for you if you want a loan, if you want to do a tender, when you need to show customer that you're compliant. It's a certificate, but it doesn't show that you're law-abiding. Okay. Reason being, most of the time we seek tax compliance when we are being requested for. So when you go to a bank and they ask you for a tax compliance, that is the time you go to get it. But you might be having tax arrears in the system and request KRA for a tax compliant, and they can give you. The other thing is that most of our returns are self-assessment. We sit down, we do it ourselves. We do the VAT, all the returns we do self-assessment. So at the end of the day, KRA is supposed to come back and confirm whatever return you've been able to file. So you might be doing your filing very well, and you don't have arrears, you have a tax compliance. But the day they will come to do an audit, they find that you have so many issues, and actually you have a lot of taxes you've not paid. Yes.
So it does not certify that you have been paying your tax?
And not at all.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you have a tax compliance certificate, you should not be comfortable like, okay, I've been paying my
Not
taxes.
unless you've been audited.
Yeah.
Especially audits. When you're audited and you're given letter of finding, then you can. Then you can.
All right. Yes. So my next question is on tax filing. I wish we were taught how to file our returns in school, because I am sure even the Gen Zs in this place, they're looking at me. Many people don't know how they're supposed to file their tax returns. So maybe I know we should be taking a break any moment now, but if you can just get into how should one file their returns? Yeah.
So there's so many ways, especially when you're talking about filing returns, we're talking about individuals. When we talk about companies, that's a different engagement, because for company or advocate, you have a tax consultant who can do that. For individuals, when you interact with the iTax, I don't know, it's because as we interact with the iTax so much, so we find it very user-friendly, but I know for people who've never interacted with it, it has a challenge. First of all, KRA, if you go to KRA portal, they even have videos of how you can do a return, especially as an individual, even filing a new return, they show you. Also, we also found as a company that there are so many challenges of tax training, tax education out there. So for us as a company, we do webinars every month to just make sure that you learn about and those are some of the things that we talk about, understanding iTax and making sure that you can be able to see your ledger, be able to file, even and be able to get your own tax compliance. But when it comes to company filing, that is very sensitive.
All right, I'll ask you to hold
Yes.
that thought, and then we'll come back and pick it up from there. Right now, let's take a short break. We'll be back in a moment. And we're back. Thank you for staying with us. Before we took that break, Dr. Regina, you were just talking to us about how companies can go about just filing.
Yeah. So what I wanted to mention is that when KRAs want to audit a company, they use the data provided to them. So the data that we file every month and what auditors file is what KRA uses, what we call audit triggers. To just look at your numbers are not okay, so that they can. It's one of the areas they really check. We call it data-driven audit. So for a company, they have to get a sound tax consultant, and not just an auditor, a sound tax consultant to make sure that the filing is done properly. Otherwise, the issues that are provided there can be so many, and you cannot say, I did not file.
Yeah.
Or you tell them, I did not know, the person who was filing is not competent. You cannot say that. So, and then the moment we do we file, we have an original return. When you do an amendment, the amendment is still on the system. So even KRA can be able to judge and say what is the difference between the original and the amendment and what are the issues. Yes.
All right.
So it's a sensitive place. Companies should be able to get a tax consultant for that.
Well, I want us to go back to the taxes, maybe types of taxes. I don't know if you mentioned this, but are there tax implications for income that is earned from investments, say my dividends?
Yeah. So when we do dividends, we have a withholding tax that is final tax. So depending on the investment that you're doing, we can be able to advise you on each and every one. But for dividend, it has a withholding that is final tax. Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, on tax brackets, tell me a bit about tax brackets. How do we go about tax brackets? Yeah.
Okay. For someone who is employed, there is the graduated scale. So there's a 20%, 25%, 30%, 35%. Now, with the Finance Act, there was an introduction of 32.5% and 35%. So depending on the nature of your salary, how much salary you're having, you go to those tax brackets as an employee. For a company, it's 30%. It is guided on the profits and losses that you're going to be having. So you have to show your income, show your expenses, then have the net profit. Then that net profit is done the 30%. If you're a small business, you can opt for something we call turnover tax. It's a final tax also. And you do it on a monthly basis. It's tagged on your sales. So if you do a sales of $1 million today, you do 1.5%. And the other portion that I would want to caution people who are doing turnover tax is the affordable housing levy. I believe around last year, when the affordable, there was an amendment done for the affordable housing levy that said the landlords and the businesses, especially business who are doing turnover tax, they should also pay the affordable housing levy. So you do the 1.5% turnover tax, you'd also do 1.5% affordable housing levy. If you're doing the monthly rental income tax, so these are residential property, the property that we see. The rent collected, 7.5%. on gross rent. So if you collect 300,000, you do 7.5% and you pay the monthly rental income tax. And then you also pay 1.5% of that gross rent on the affordable housing levy. So there are so many taxes there. So sometimes when it comes to people who have this property or these businesses, the tax advice is very, very important for them to be able to be guided properly.
All right, I hear you on that. Now, there's the technology transition, which now brings in ATMs.
Yes.
Which I feel like most people sort of were complaining on how the process on ATMs is just hectic.
Yes.
Just tell me about ATMs.
ATMs was introduced, and it was introduced because we had the ETR, the old ETR, had a lot of issues, especially on fraud. So we had issues of invalid invoices. People would buy invoices. And because how VAT works, it works on sales and purchases. So when you sell on this side, you have purchases on this side. You bring them together. So you had VAT on your sales, VAT on your purchases. You bring them together, and then you pay the value added tax. So because you're having a lot of sales and you don't have purchases, people would go out there and look for purchases in the illegal formula. So there was a time that they did a matching that said, if I'm a buyer, if I sold to you and you bought from me, that invoice that I gave you, because you're also going to put it on the system, it's the same invoice I should be having. Same amount, same date, same invoice number. But when we did the matching, the KRA found that only 25% could match. So there was a lot of inconsistency and a lot of issues around ETR. And that necessitated the ETIMS formula. ETIMS sends KRA information on real-time basis. So when you do your sales, KRA sees that sale actually within a day. When you do your purchases, when you have your purchases, you give your supplier their PIN. They also input the same data. So KRA is able to view how much your sales are on their side without you even filing, and how much are your purchases. At the end of the month, you're just looking at the populated data they have given you. You counter check it. If it is correct, you just say file.
How accurate is it?
Very accurate. I can say they've really tried. Although this year, since we had the Gen Z issues, the outer population is not working as they had purposed, because also we had the case to call the Finance Act 2023 invalid, but it was reinstated this October. I guess because of those issues, there was a lot of now delays. But in the instances when the outer population came in, it was working very well. ETIMS is in so many formula. There's ETIMS USSD, where you just say *222#. And there's a ETIMS portal, where you go to iTax portal. And there's also on eCitizen, you can do it on. There's client, where you just download it on your laptop, or you buy a machine. There's the integrated way. Actually, there are so many citizens, from the lowest mama mboga to the biggest of the company. So they have incorporated, because the idea was to let all businesses in Kenya to be under ETIMS. This ETIMS was pushing compliance to the next level, because the moment you transact with this system, you cannot hide yourselves. So it was a very calculated move to just make sure that they are able to monitor all our businesses. Of course, it brought a lot of fear for business people. So they're like, do I need to do black market? Issues like, how can I transact in cash now came in hand. Can we buy in cash and not do business out of the system? So those are the issues, and KRA should look at it and see how do they benefit out of this system, so that you don't also lose business because of having a system that is there. But ETIMS is supposed to be working that way.
You've touched on one not losing business because of this system. And around, I think, a month or 2 months ago, I'm not sure, I stand corrected, around probably 2 months ago, content creators were online complaining about ATMs, you know, and the fact that they are not able to work on it, you know, like they lose businesses simply because they cannot, you know, get into the ATMs and just so. When you're telling me it's actually working, so I just want to refer to that, because I saw most content creators just going online and complaining about it, and they were not saying they don't want to do that, they don't want to pay the tax and whatnot. They were just complaining about the fact that it is not working. They can't find their way around it.
Okay. So operating ETIMS is very easy. Even the USSD is very, very easy. The catch is, the moment you go to a company and they tell you, we cannot pay you until you come with the items invoice.
Yeah.
As a content creator, you want to market their product. So they are telling you, for you to market our product, you need to give us an items invoice. That is a problem.
Yes.
Because they want to pay you 100,000, 200,000, but under items. It is going to give KRA data that you are paid 200,000. So next year, 2025, you should be filing for these amounts. You should now show KRA the whole year you earned $1 million, because they can see it on the system. You earned $1 million, so give us our taxes. So the moment someone doesn't want to show that part that they earned money, that is now the problem. But
the complaining was it wasn't working.
Okay.
They were not able to get that so that they can get this business.
Okay.
So you're promising us that it is working.
Items is working.
Okay.
Items is working, and there are so many varieties of items that we have sold you. Even you go to a cyber, they'll still give you an items invoice.
Okay.
So previously when it started, it was limited to client, to you buy the machine. But right now, even on your phone without internet, you can generate an items invoice. So they have really looked at those issues, because remember, there are companies who says everything has to be items compliant. Even the Mama Mboga who is supplying us sukuma wiki here for lunch come with the items. So even that person has to be accommodated in this system, because for them, they want to protect themselves. So they want to make sure that all, especially big companies, they are really doing the items part very, very well. Yes. But now the catch is that the moment you register, next year you have to show, to show you earned money, so give us the taxes. Even you today, if someone tells you, oh, if you need to do this emceeing job, give us an items invoice. Put it at the back of your mind, you have to do a return for that money.
For that.
And possibly pay taxes. Yes.
Okay. Now we understand that more.
Yes.
Well, maybe what tax strategies should one consider at different stages of their lives? Okay. Yeah.
So for instance, if you're doing a small business below 5 million, I always had, doing a business in Kenya is a tall order. Yeah. Convincing customers, getting your product out there, social media, doing a business in Kenya is quite something, because we having consumers also who are very knowledgeable. Before they buy your product, they don't not just buying it for the sake. They have looked for other buyers. They bargain. So for someone who is doing business below 5 million, concentrate on doing your business well. The only taxes that you can pay at that particular point is corporation tax, because when you register a business, it should come with the corporation tax. If you do a business name, it is tagged to your personal PIN, and you should also declare that business income. So for you, it is bookkeeping. Show your sales, and then have a system that you can be able to track your expenses. Also, it will help you know the growth of the business. So for you, it is bookkeeping. Keep your books properly, that at the end of the year, when you're going to show your business income, you can show this is my profit. If you made a loss, you can be able to show a good loss, and with your documentation that is properly done. For companies that are above 5 million, most of the time you find our companies are vatable. Most of the items that we sell in Kenya are vatable. At that point is that when you start doing the vatability, apply for VAT. It's very important. If you at that threshold and you're selling vatable goods or services, register for VAT. And if you have employees, and remember, a business owner is the first employee of the company, register for pay as you earn. So you also register for pay as you earn. And at that point where you're at 5 million turnover, why don't you have a tax consultant who can help you now? And in case you need to ask a question, you can ask a question. They can look at how you're doing your books. For the longest that I've done tax issues, I found that most of us, our biggest problem is on documentation. Even when KRA comes, because it is evidence-based, they come with a demand of 20 million. The only way you can work on it is documentation. When they say your sales was 50 million, but yours was 40, it's showing them, this is my sales ledger, this is my bank statement, these are my invoicing, and it is 40, not 50. So most of the people don't have that document. We're just running businesses up and down. By the time you even think of now incorporating an accounting software, having an accountant, it's 5 years down the line. But remember, when audit is happening, it happens from 5 years backward. So it will even capture that day that you did not have those bookkeeping, and you find the taxes that the KRA will raise will be for the years that you did not put your books together. So I encourage especially entrepreneurs who are building businesses and businesses where you want to scale, make sure that from the onset you keep putting your documentation properly.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And what tax laws should everyone enlighten themselves on? Yeah.
Okay, right now we are having a lot of debates about taxes, about levies, about everything.
Yeah.
So depending on what you're doing, and depending, if you're an employee, understanding the strategies that there are strategies also for employee. If you get a mortgage, if you get an insurance, those pension, if you get the housing schemes, those ones, the money that you save, whether it's education policy, those policies, there is a percentage of our tax relief. So depending if you're an employee, how can I be able to reduce my pay? Remember, for you, we are having so many, we are having the pay, SHA, the rest. So how can we minimize that? So an employee, you're really on that point. So for companies also who give, because also I've seen it as a problem, who give benefits, if you're giving bonuses, a car, a house, allowances, being able to understand the tax element of all these benefits. Because sometimes you find you stayed for 5 years giving these benefits, you did not tax them properly. When KRA come back, they just give you a very big penalty because of not doing it properly. So if you're a company and you're giving so many benefits, make sure that you're able to understand all these benefits, what are the tax element of them. The other portion is for companies. Just being in a position where you can understand about taxes. I mentioned that for us, we do a lot of tax training, tax advocacy, financial literacy, because we believe when you understand, you're able to make better business decisions. Just understand. And being in forums, the KRA has forums, a lot of them on training. If you go online, even on YouTube, you're going to see a lot of education. Just understand. If you're doing imports, get to that, what is the requirement? Because there are also levies at the import. If you're doing export, what can expose my business? If you're doing manufacturing, what is the issues around manufacturing? There are association also, a lot of association. When you go to manufacturing, they have, the exporters have construction, they join this association, because one of the things they do a lot of advocacy on taxes and issues affecting them. You'll be able to understand, so that you don't keep making mistake. By the time KRA comes, you're done. Yeah.
Okay. And we're very scared of KRA, by the way. All of us as Kenyan citizens, well, we're really scared of KRA. But anyway, I want us to bring this discussion to a close. And there's something you mentioned, and I feel like maybe you can close with that. That there are strategies to reduce taxable income within legal limits.
Yes.
They are there.
Yes, they are there.
Okay.
For income tax, there are so many benefits. There are so many incentives out there. If you're building, there's the industrial building, capital there are a lot of capital allowances. For machinery buying, building a pack house, building an industrial building. There are so many capital allowances. For businesses that are going that level, it is very important to ask. We have others for income tax. We have others like acknowledging interest income. We find interest expense. When you pick a loan, there's that interest expense is an allowable deduction. Bad debts, I find so many companies have issues with bad debts. But bad debts, they are also allowable expenses if you're able to demonstrate that you tried to recover without success. So for us, when we come into you, we can be able to advise that this is how you can be able to do your strategy. When it comes to VAT, there are others also. For instance, when it comes to VAT, if you're having a lot of turnover, being able to see how you purchase planning on how you purchase, how you do payments is very, very important. So for someone who is having so many turnovers per month, we can be able to guide them on how to leverage on VAT.
Okay.
For someone who is building a commercial building, if you go around Nairobi, those commercial spaces are VATable. And VAT for commercial property is very expensive because you don't have purchases on a daily basis. So for someone who wants to put at that building, they can register for VAT early. So you keep piling a credit. By the time you start renting out, you use that credit. You can even use it for a year, 2 years without paying VAT. So those are some of the things we talk about. When we come for pay as you earn, I've mentioned now those are benefits for the employee. So and you can study and even guide your employee. If we go get a mortgage for everybody, we reduce this with these percentages. Companies that have people with disabilities, they have a lot of incentives. So they are about 150,000 per month. They are not supposed to pay as you earn. So you can guide your employees. So tax, when it comes to tax strategies and how to minimize the burden, is upon getting the right tax advisor and being able to look at your numbers and see this is how they play along.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Regina, for just joining us and enlightening us on matters tax. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
All right. That was Dr. Regina Wanja Kingori, and we were talking about mastering tax strategies, and she's gotten to enlighten us on quite a number of things. I believe that this was an informative conversation, and this is where we get to end Good Morning Kenya for today. My name is Vivian Degwa. Coming up next is the Senate proceedings. See you tomorrow, same time, God willing.